Welcome to our Midweek Devotional. My name is Myles and I'm on staff here at Shady Grove, and I want to start today by asking you this question. Have you ever sold yourself on a bad idea? No? If not, I'm glad you're watching, Jesus. But everyone at some point has sold themselves on at least one bad idea, most likely 2 or 3 or a few dozen. Some things are too good to be true. That's the kind of things that we sell ourselves on a lot of times. You know those ads that used to be on TV that would have the blue screen at the end and everything seemed to be $19.95 or 16 payments of $19.95 or something like that? Well, how many of those things did you buy before you realized none of them worked? You know, since then I've often wondered just how much money those companies behind those blue screens have made by deceiving people that way. They know those things don't work. But really, they aren't the ones who did the deceiving. I deceived myself. You have deceived yourself. They advertised something that was too good to be true, and I took the bait. It wasn't their fault. It was mine. You know, we've all bought that brand new wonder-working drug or device thinking it was going to work, thinking it was going to solve all of our problems because that was the way it was advertised. But then we got it and we realized that's not what it did. All it did was take some of our money away. Maybe you've gotten into a bad financial deal that seemed really good at the time, seemed like a good deal at the time, but then you realized it was more of a nightmare. Maybe you've told yourself or others that you're fine, that nothing's wrong, nothing to see here, when really you weren't fine, when really there wasn't nothing, there was something. Maybe you dated someone who you knew wasn't who you should be with, but you just told yourself that, oh, they'll change. They'll change. They will be different. Nothing has to happen, but somehow they will turn out differently. Now, as you think about those things that you've lied to yourself about, I want to ask you this. If someone came to you trying to sell you all those things the way they turned out, would you buy them? Would you take that person up on that offer? Of course not. Of course not. Why? Because you would know it was a bad deal. So why do we sell ourselves on things we know are terrible for us, things we know are not going to end well? It's because we're not always honest with ourselves. You know, the person who is easiest to deceive is the person I see in the mirror every day. The person who is easiest to deceive is the person I see in the mirror. So with that in mind, I want to point out a verse in the Old Testament that reveals just how true this is. In the Old Testament, there were these people called prophets, and prophets spoke on behalf of God to the people. And many times they would talk about things to come, but that was just a part of what prophets did. They were really the spokesman for God to the people, generally calling people to repent, meaning calling them to turn around, to change, to get back to how God wanted them to be. And in the Old Testament, we have this prophet named Jeremiah. And here's what Jeremiah said in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. He said, "The heart is deceitful above all things, and it is beyond all cure. Who can understand it?" The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? Now, I don't know about you, but that's not exactly the most encouraging verse I've ever read in the Bible, right? But you know, Jeremiah was right. No one does a better job at deceiving me, than my own heart. And there's never a time where I don't have to pay attention to it. Isn't that something? Jeremiah might have suggested that if you want to avoid self-deception, you would have to constantly tell yourself to avoid it. Because he knew there would never be a time when you wouldn't have to be concerned about self-deception. And he even adds this at the end. He says, who can understand it? Meaning, no one can figure out why we do this. No one knows why we do this. Everybody probably has their own reasons. And at the time, those reasons always seem legitimate, don't they? But you owe it to yourself to know why. You owe it to yourself to be honest with yourself about the things you're selling to yourself. You owe it to yourself to be honest with yourself about the things you are selling to yourself. If you have a habit of lying to yourself, I know you really don't want to. And you know how I know that? Because you don't like that quality in others. You don't want to see that in others. That's not a good thing to see in others. And if we don't like seeing it in those around us, why would we want to see it in ourselves? So I know you don't want to be that way. None of us does. But why do we do it? Well, the good news in this is the Apostle Peter gives us some direction on this issue. He said in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1, he said, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit. There's our word. Rid yourself of hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. See, Peter said, stop lying to those around you, but here he says, rid yourself of all deceit, not just the deceit that you have with other people, but especially, most importantly, stop lying to yourself. Stop deceiving yourself and be brutally honest. Ask yourself, if someone else was trying to sell me on this, whatever this is, if someone else was trying to sell me on this, would I buy it? And if the answer is no, you know what to do. You know why Peter thought deceit was such a big deal? It's because God is not deceitful. In fact, He is the exact opposite of deceitful. See, God lays everything out on the table. Now, He doesn't always give us all the details, because that would probably scare us off. But God does not lie. God is always truthful. He is brutally honest when He needs to be, and sometimes that hurts. But He knows it's what we need. While we can deceive ourselves, God brings those things to light. He exposes them for what they are. Lies and deception. See, people who follow Jesus don't lie to themselves. They don't deceive themselves. Why? Because there's no deception in God. There is no deception in Jesus. So ask Him to point out where you've been lying to yourself. Sure, that's a terrifying thing to ask, because once you know, you can't let it go. Once you know, you can't let it go. But it's in your best interest to do so. And you probably already know what those things are, don't you? You probably already know at least a lot of those things. But still, ask Him. Ask Him to reveal those things, to point it out. And then ask Him to help you do something about it. Then resolve to do something about what you now know. You may have to sell it. You may have to break up with it. You may have to give it away. You may have to decide, I am not going there. You may have to decide, I cannot buy this. I can't afford to buy this. Not because I would lose money, but because it would cost me something greater than money. You have to resolve to do something about it. But whatever you do with it, don't deceive yourself any longer. Decide to follow Jesus. Embrace the message of Jesus. Throw off those things that so easily deceive us, that so easily deceive you. Don't be deceived. Don't deceive yourself. And you know what? You'll be better for it. And you definitely will not regret it. I can promise you that. Hey, thanks so much for being here today for our midweek devotional. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you soon.